Fellas, there's a lot of undefeated fighters in the UFC right now, and today we're going to be taking a look at a list of undefeated fighters that are currently in the UFC, and we're going to be predicting when they'll lose so basically when they'll lose their first fight. Some of them are recent, or some of them will lose soon, in my opinion. Some of them I can't predict. Some of them might lose in a lot of fights, but we're going to be going over the list. If you agree with these takes, please let me know. If you disagree with these takes, again, please let me know. We're going to go straight in there with someone who a lot of people don't really like right now. He's under a lot of hate. Ian Garry. Now, Ian Garry, obviously, he's got the whole thing with Jeff Neal. I think Ian Garry's going to lose in around 2 fights' time. I think UFC are going to try and build the fight with Wonderboy. Dana said that, Wonderboy don't want to fight, but I don't buy that. I don't believe it. I think Ian Garry versus Wonderboy could be an amazing fight night main event, or even just stick it on a pay per view like the MSG card. I don't know, but Ian Garry versus Wonderboy could be a banger of a fight. Extremely high level kickboxing there. I just think it'll be a passing of the torch moment. I think I can just see Ian Garry winning. I can see him getting the better of Wonderboy, and I think he's got more to win than Wonderboy has. So I'm gonna go. I think Ian Garry gets a decision win over Wonderboy. I don't think he finishes him though, because Wonderboy's striking is too good to be finished. But yeah, I think Ian Garry beats Wonderboy, and then with all this built-in confidence, he'll have to. The UFC might give Ian Garry a title shot for beating Wonderboy, but if they do, that's just terrible because he doesn't deserve a title shot for beating Wonderboy. So he'll have to face a top contender, but I don't see Ian Garry beating any top contenders right now. Because you got to realise, if he beats Wonderboy, he's either going to have to face Shavkat, Bilal, Covington, Usman, potentially Leon Edwards if he gets an immediate title shot. There's too many grapplers in this division for him, and there's too many tough matchups for him. I don't see him beating any of them. So yeah, even if he gets rebooked against Jeff Neal in his next fight, I think he beats Jeff Neal. I think he beats most people outside the top five, to be honest with you. But I think he'd beat Wonderboy as well. But I don't think he beats any of the top contenders. So I think he'll win a fight, and then his confidence and all this momentum for him, he'll get him far, and then he'll get a big fight, and then he'll lose, in my opinion. Like I said, even if he gets an immediate title shot with Edwards, I think Edwards beats him right now. I think Edwards is more experienced. He's got more skills than Ian Garry. But again, I think Ian Garry there's too many contenders in the welterweight division. He doesn't beat Bilal Muhammad or Covington or Usman or Leon or Shavkat. I just don't think he beats any of them right now. And I think Ian Garry, yeah, I'm going to go with 2 fights time for Ian Garry. Wins his next fight against either Jeff Neal or Wonderboy, but I don't think he'll beat a top contender yet. And you got to realise, I think he's only like 25 years old, so he's still got so much potential for his career. But right now, I think it's too early for him, and I don't think he's going to get a title fight. I think he might get a title fight, but I don't think he's going to win the belt soon. And I think the top contenders at welterweight is too stacked for Ian Garry right now. So I'm going to say in 2 fights time, he will lose. Then we've got Ilia Tuporia. I think he loses it in his next fight. The UFC have made it pretty clear, especially after Volkanovski versus Rodriguez, that they want Ilia Tuporia versus Volkanovski. And this is probably going to be around the December time, maybe the December card, if not the next pay-per-view next year. But I don't think he beats Volkanovski. Now, I do think he could catch Volkanovski. I think if there's one guy that's going to like slump Volkanovski, it's going to be Ilia Tuporia. He's like the little villain of featherweight, but if I had to bet money, you've got to bet on Volkanovski. He's the pound for pound best right now. I've got to pick him to win against Ilia Tuporia. And I don't think Ilia Tuporia beats Volkanovski. I think Volkanovski's too talented, too well rounded. And I give him like a 20% chance of beating Volk, most likely by a TKO or KO, drops him and then finishes with ground and pound. I don't think he has too much I don't think he has too much of a threat. The wrestling, Volkanovski's faced grappling before. He's faced Islam Makhachev. He's faced Brian Ortega. So I don't think he'd struggle too much against Ilia Tuporia in the grappling side. And striking, Ilia Tuporia is a great striker, but I see Volkanovski winning. And I think, to be fair to Ilia Tuporia though, after he loses to Volkanovski, I think he beats pretty much everyone else. I think the only guy he'd struggle with really is Holloway. I think he beats Yair Rodriguez. I think he beats every other contender at featherweight, but I don't think he beats Volkanovski in his next fight. If he does, that's insane. His hype will go up so much if he beats Volkanovski, but that's a huge if. It's not easy to beat pound for pound number one in the world, Volkanovski. So for Ilia Tuporia, I'm going to say that he loses in his next fight against Volkanovski. But I don't think he'll end up going on a losing streak. I think it'll just be one of those fights that he loses and then comes back from. But I don't think he beats Volkanovski. And to be fair, he hasn't really faced too much contenders either. He's faced Josh Emmett, who was never really a huge contender at featherweight. He's faced Bryce Mitchell, and who else has he faced? Like Ryan Hall, Jai Herbert. Like, yeah, I think he needs to face. I think to go from Josh Emmett to Alexander Volkanovski is a huge step up. So I'm going to say he loses his next fight. But next, we've got one of the biggest prospects in the UFC, Khamzat Chimaev. Now, I think he loses to Gilbert Burns. Now, hear me out. Listen, I know everyone's going to be commenting, right, what are you talking about, loses to Gilbert Burns? I did make a video a few weeks ago of why I think Gilbert Burns is going to win, but to summarise it, Khamzat Chimaev didn't put on that same dominant grappling performance that he normally puts on. It looked like he struggled a little bit against Gilbert Burns, and people were saying that was a robbery. I do think Khamzat won that fight, but people were saying it was a robbery. It was a very, very close fight, a dangerous fight for Khamzat, and that's Gilbert Burns. Now, don't get me wrong, his BJJ is amazing, but Gilbert Burns is a small welterweight. Gilbert Burns used to be a lightweight. He's a small welterweight. Paulo Costa is light heavyweight. He's on the secret juice. I don't think Paulo Costa's a light heavyweight. To go from Gilbert Burns to Costa, and I know he fought Kevin Holland in between, but to go from Gilbert Burns to Costa, I think he's going to, I don't know, I feel like with Khamzat Chimaev, I think he's going to run in too confident, and I don't know, I've got a bad feeling that Costa's going to defend. And I think when it comes to the feet, Costa beats Khamzat Chimaev on the feet, because Costa's 2 losses, Adesanya and Marvin Vettori, both of those losses were due to striking. He's never really had any big grappling problems in the UFC. He's always had pretty clean striking. So I think on the feet, Costa's right now better than Khamzat Chimaev. Maybe Chimaev comes different, but I'm going to pick Costa to win the fight against Khamzat Chimaev. But I do think Khamzat will take it further than Costa, in the sense that I feel like if Khamzat was to lose to Costa or lose to anyone, he'd probably take another 8 months out of the sport and just go ham. And I think he'd come back a different fighter, because Khamzat just seems like a bit of an ego fighter. He seems a bit arrogant right now. I think if he was to take a loss, he'd become way better than he already is. But I can just see for some reason he struggles to wrestle Costa, and Costa gets the win. Costa ends up getting the win. And yeah, I'm going to go with Costa to win that fight. But maybe this is a crazy take. Maybe I'm waffling completely, but I do think Khamzat Chimaev loses to Costa. I've got a really bad feeling about it. So I'm going to say he loses his next fight, but after that loss, he comes back. And just similar to Khamzat, I've got the same idea with Shavkat Rakhmonov, but I think Shavkat will lose in around 2-3 times fights time. I think he's going to clear out the welterweight contenders. I think he beats Kelvin Gastelum if they get rebooked against each other, because I think that fight was called off, but maybe they got moved to UFC 294. I heard them talking about that, but I think he beats Kelvin Gastelum if they fight. I think he continues this finishing streak and finishes him as well. And then after the Kelvin Gastelum fight, maybe they'll give him a title shot, but I don't think he will. I think he'll probably have to face another contender, maybe someone like Bilal or Covington. I don't know who he's going to have to face, but he'll have to face another contender, and I think he wins. Shavkat's extremely talented. He's one of the best grapplers in the welterweight division. One of the best grapplers in the UFC, honestly. And he's got some great striking as well to back it up. Like, I think if it was, let's say, him versus Covington, I think the grappling to cancel each other out, but I've got Shavkat winning that on the feet. But I think he'd have a 50-50 chance against Leon Edwards when he eventually gets a title shot, because I can see Leon beating him. Because I've noticed that when I watch Shavkat Rakhmonov, he does everything pretty well, but his head movement is kind of non-existent. He's got really dodgy head movement. His striking defense scares me, and I feel like against a guy like Leon, if Leon was to catch him with something, and especially with the experience that Leon's got, I'd be worried that he loses to Leon. So I actually think that if he was to get matched up against Leon, I can just see Leon Edwards winning that. Because you got to realise, Leon's only lost to Kamaru Usman in the UFC. He's only lost to Kamaru Usman, who he's beaten twice, and another guy on his debut. Apart from that, he's beaten everyone else. So I think Leon would beat him in a close fight, maybe a decision. But then maybe Shavkat Rakhmonov would go away, improve his striking, come back and win the belt, similar to Khamzat Chimaev. But I can just see Shavkat Rakhmonov, unless I see more from his striking defense, I don't think he's going to stay on this streak that he's on. But I think he'll get a loss in about 2-3 fights time. Next up, we have Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, this one's really hard to predict, because not only is he like really low down in the rankings, isn't he like ranked number 12? I don't exactly know his rank. I don't think he's 12, but he's like around top 10. And he hasn't got a fight booked. No one really knows how the bantamweight division is going to go. I mean, if you'd have told me last week that O'Malley was going to be champion, I would not have believed you. So, but I think Umar Nurmagomedov is going to clear these bantamweights out. I think he's going to clear them out. I like most Dagestani fighters. I see them as quite, the same kind of style. I don't see that with Umar Nurmagomedov. Of course, he's a wrestler, he's a Dagestani wrestler, but I see him more. He's willing to take more risks, and he's a decent striker. So I think he loses in around 3 years. Like honestly, I think he beats every single bantamweight right now. The only ones I can see him struggling with is Marab and maybe Henry Cejudo if they would run into each other. But apart from that, I think he beats every bantamweight. And I think he's going to run through the rankings eventually. I think he's going to go on a little streak and just clear the rankings up. I'm not sure the UFC are going to give him a title shot soon. It depends if they give him that Dagestani privilege. But I think eventually he'll just keep winning, and then he'll get a title shot. And I think he'll fight Marab. And from what I've seen, I've got Umar Nurmagomedov beating Marab. I think when it comes down to pure grappling, they're pretty even, but I might edge it to Umar. And when it comes to striking, again, they're not they're not worlds apart, but I'm going to have to go with Umar Nurmagomedov. That guy can crack, so I think he possibly beats Marab. But before he beats Marab, I think Marab's going to go on like a little bantamweight tear, beat a lot of the contenders. And then one of the kind of like Charles Oliveira at lightweight, as in Charles Oliveira was beating all the the lightweights, and then Islam comes in and beats him. I see that happening with Marab and Umar. I think Marab's going to clear out these bantamweight contenders, and then Umar's going to come in and beat him. That's what I can see happening. And I think he stays undefeated for a few years. This is the only fighter that I genuinely can't see losing. Like, I really can't see Umar Nurmagomedov losing a fight. So, I don't know. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough with Umar Nurmagomedov, but I don't see him losing a fight. So, yeah, I really can't predict. I think he'll stay undefeated for a few years. Maybe he'll get cracked at one point, or maybe because obviously he's willing to take risks, he'll get beaten somehow. But right now, I'm gonna say he stays undefeated for 3+ years. I honestly see him staying undefeated for a while. And then finally, Bo Nickal. Bo Nickal, again, he's really hard to predict because I think he's only got 5 fights and he's not even ranked. So it's kind of hard to predict exactly when he's going to lose compared to someone that's near the end of the rankings. But I think he beats every single unranked middleweight. He's so talented. He's the best wrestler in the UFC, in my opinion, or at least one of them. He beats every single unranked middleweight, and I think he's only one fight away from fighting a ranked fighter, to be honest with you. He's already got so much momentum around his name. I think he beats every single unranked fighter, and I think he's only one fight away from a rank. No, I think he beats every unranked fighter, and then I think he's only one fight away from fighting a ranked fighter, if that makes sense. But I think he's going to climb to the top of the rankings. You look at the middleweight division. Middleweight is quite a poor division. I'm going to be honest with you. The talent pool at middleweight compared to the divisions like bantamweight and lightweight, even welterweight, I think middleweight's quite poor, and I think Bo Nickal's going to smoke a lot of them because he's got the best wrestling in the UFC and he's got genuine knockout power. Now, I know he's only really been able to display that against Val Woodburn, who, I mean, the guy, Val Woodburn, what even is that? But yeah, I think he's one of the best. And I can only see him really losing to a striker with great takedown defense. Maybe he'll get exposed because, like I said, he hasn't really faced an extremely high-level opponent. So maybe he'll get exposed. But with what I've seen, I think he'll lose in around 6 or 7 fights. He'll get close to a title shot. Maybe he'll even win the belt. The thing is with Bo Nickal, though, I think by the time he's got a title shot, I think Adesanya's going to be gone by then. I think Adesanya's going to be gone. But maybe he gets a title shot, but I could see him losing in around 6 or 7 fights. Maybe he gets exposed. Maybe he gets knocked out. Maybe he's not as good as we thought he was. But it's really hard to predict with Bo Nickal. But I'm going to go with 6 or 7 fights. But yeah, that is my list for when will undefeated fighters lose their role. So please let me know your own takes in the comments. Please let me know if I missed any fighters out or if I had a really bad take like the Khamzat one. But yeah, please let me know. Please let me know if you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.